This is Gemara Pesachim Daf Kof Chof Aleph Al Gutavach. All the learning for this month, the month of Nisan, has been sponsored by the Grun family. Leading Nishmas Chaim Mordechai ben Naftali Tzvi and the Shamash have an Aliyah. And as we conclude Mesechtes Pesachim and move into Shkalim, the learning of the entire Chabura should be a schos for his neshama, a tremendous schos, all the learning that we do together. Of course, all the men v'vega chaim mesarshlam sim reizel sarbas knendel it basian was chaisa yusel b'mendel as a prince shavlei shomar snabi of shafigu shulchan fal davin itri v'shmol tilo denu chan reizim el chayv esmin le brachos de v'misa de neidem v'shin mendel simcha tavio ben tovio ben avigal fesh asim and figu devayer milchilei sipor nasleli hu menachem mendel ben teva v'soig shar chalei Yisrael well as schos shidduch v'ataleya bas ita and menachem mendel ben Elisheva. We pick it up in the bottom of Kuf Chaf Amid Beis. The final day, the final blot of Mesechtes Pesachim. We started about four lines before the white lines. We began the statement of Rava, but we're going to pick up from there, and we'll take one moment to point out the Lach Lamaisa, as today's daf is a bit short. Amar Rava, Achol Matzah Bizman Hazeh, again, Kuf Chaf Amid Beis. We're 7 lines from the bottom. Achol Matzah Bizman Hazeh, Achar Chatzois, Rav Elazar ben Azariah, something that we have every year. Comes the Seder, comes Chatzais. We know you should eat it before Chatzais. We know maybe you don't have to. This is the Gemara, says the Gemara, according to Rav Elazar ben Azariah, that we learned yesterday, that teaches us that you have to eat the Karban Pesach before Chatzais. Therefore, you have to eat the Matzah, which nowadays, Bizman Hazeh, is in place of the Karban Pesach. You have to eat it as well before Chatzais. First, let's read the Gemara, then we'll point out the Halacha L'Maisa. Says the Gemara Pshita, of course, Kima de Eskish LePesach. What's the chiddush? Obviously, it has to be eaten by chatzais because the matzah, the afikaimin, is like the Karban Pesach. Says the Gemara, you would have thought that the extra drasha that we learned yesterday is taking it out of the hakish when the Rebbe repeated it, repeated it for his first reason, and therefore it comes out that the matzah afikaimin is equatable to the Karban Pesach, and therefore it says the Gemara, according to Rav Elazar ben Azariah, it has to be eaten by chatzais. So anyone who wants, you quickly look at Taisus over here, Amar Rava Achol Bizman Hazeh, and Taisus over here points out, actually, I'm sorry, this is right, Taisus. Taisus a little bit further down is where he gets involved, that it has to be by chatzais, but more importantly is the Shulchan Aruch and Tov Ayin Zayin. If you look at the wording there, it's very important. The wording of the Shulchan Aruch is Zoher lichatchila. One should be careful lichatchila to eat the matzah by chatzais, which of course right away points out Zoher lichatchila, the same lashon, the same wording used by the Aruch HaShulchan, shows us that it means it's a din lechatchila in the Mishnah Berurah as well, that b'diavad you're allowed to eat it after chatzos. Lechatchila one should, but many gedalim, many paiskim were themselves, they would eat it after chatzos. Famous stories with the Netziv, how he would eat it after chatzos. Just to point out one more din, it's a bit famous as an Avnei Nezer in Shin Pei Aleph Sif Hey, that the Avnei Nezer Chuvay, the Avnei Nezer writes that you can make a Tanai without going into depths, but it's really dependent mamish on our Gemara. Our Gemara is how we pass like Rav Elazar ben Azariah yom until chatzos. Who is the other opinion? The other opinion is Rav Akiva. Rav Akiva that says that the mitzvah on kol halayla, you have the mitzvah the whole night. And really the discussion is that our Gemara sounds like there's only one opinion, Rav Elazar ben Azariah. That's the reason why the halach would be like him. But there's other Gemaras that say stama like Rav Akiva, and that's the clash between the Gemaras. And that's the reason the psak is the chatchila one should do it by chatzos. However, one is allowed to eat the afikaimin after chatzos. Avnei Nezer is an interesting chiddush, we'll call it, that he says that one should do is, let's say he's getting close to chatzos, in your middle of your suda. So what should you do? He says down the Nezer, you should have a little bit of matzah right now. Have in mind, if it's Rav Elazar ben Azariah is the psak halacha, then I'm eating my afikaimin right now. And what if Rav Elazar ben Azariah is not the psak halacha? Then you should wait a few minutes till chatzos. Then this is the chiddush of Avnei Nezer. After chatzos is no longer a din of in maftir and achar pesach afikaimin, and you're then allowed to eat after chatzos other foods. So what are you going to do? 2 minutes before chatzos, you'll have a bit of matzah. Have in mind, if Rav Elazar ben Azariah is right, he's right. Wait 2 minutes. After chatzos, you're allowed to eat. So according to Rav Elazar ben Azariah, you can continue your suda. And then after the meal, what are you going to do? Eat the afikaimin again and get the opinion of Rav Akiva. That is the opinion of the Avnei Nezer. However, many Paiskin Mechasitzik and really Barashim is Ramesha Narachaim Chalakei Lamed Ches really takes Tavnezir to town almost. He's very upset and he says the Chiddush and doesn't like the Svara, and therefore Ramesha says, which is really what one would think when they read the Mishnah Berurah, the Shulchan Aruch, is L'Chatzchila, you try to get it by Chatzais, Izayir. If you can't, then you're allowed to eat it after Chatzais. And with that, let's continue and finish the Masechta. Says the Gemara, Pigel of Anaiser Metames Yadayim. We concluded the Mishnah, a din that we've seen that Pigala thought to eat it after the right time. V'anoisar, if you leave over in the carbon, and mitame you're the yadayim. This Gemara, we have seen a carbon copy of this Gemara elsewhere. Where was it elsewhere? Previously in Daf Pei, about a little more than a month ago. Says the Gemara, Rav Huna Rav Chisda. They argued, one said the reason is because we're suspectful of the Kehanim, and we'll explain in a moment. We're afraid the Kehanim will be lazy. One said it's Kazayis, and one said it's Kabeya. And as we turn over to Kuchav Aleph, we're going to see how this really is not a machlekes Rav Huna and Rav Chisda. Rather, one is explaining Pigel, one is explaining Nicer. Explains the Gemara. Chatani a Pigel, one is explaining Pigel, v'chatani a Nicer. Manditani a Pigel, the one that's explaining the din of Pigel, that if you have a das, you have a mindset kavana to eat the carbon after the prescribed time, which messes up the carbon, is because mishum chashadi kahuna. We're afraid of the koyanim. What are we suspectful for? The din is if b'mezid you go and if b'shoigig you go and you eat. You have a das, you have a thought process, eat it after the right time. Then you have to pay the bailim a keren chaimish vashim. You have to pay them extra chaimish, an extra fifth, because you ruined their carbon. But if you did it b'mezid, then you have to pay. If you did it b'shoigig, then you do not have to pay. So we're afraid that what's going to happen? That the person, this kohen, is going to have a problem with this person who brings the carbon. He's not going to be friendly with him, and he's going to say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to mess him up. He's going to purposely have das to eat it after the right time, and then he's going to tell the bailim, oh shoot, I made a mistake. By accident, I hadn't das to eat it after the right time. Then the kohen is not obligated to pay the bailim anything, and the bailim lose out their carbon. So because of that, we made a din mitame es yadayim, that the kohen's hands become tame. Now he's gonna have to go bother to go be mitaher, to wash and purify his hands in order to prevent the kohanim to do this sadistic evil trick to mess up the carbon. We made their hands tame. That's if you learn it's on pegel. Manditani anaiser, says the Gemara, is misham atzleikunas, because we're afraid they're going to be lazy. We want them to eat at the right time. So therefore we made a din. If you don't eat it at the right time and you leave over the carbon, then your hands become tamei. Now we explain the second machlekes. Chadamer kezayis, chadamer kebeya. Mandamer kezayis, ki isura. Like every isser in the Torah is always an isser to eat a kezayis. Aside from obviously Pesach, Chametz, I'm sorry. Mandamer kebeya is kutam asai, is like the dinim of Tumah that only starts with a beya. These are the two dinim of Pigel and Nicer. Says the final Mishnah. We conclude with some dinim of the carbon Pesach. There's two karbanos. Bisman Beis Hamikdash. Hopefully, we have one more week. The Beis Hamikdash will still be here, and we have to know these halachas. That if the Beis Hamikdash is standing and we're eating the carbon Pesach, what do we eat during that meal? Carbon Pesach, and of course the carbon shlamim. Don't forget that shlamim of Yudalid, which this year we know is a bit different because we don't bring the shlamim Yudalid, the shlamim to fill you up. We don't bring that on Shabbos. But either way, other karbanos you might be eating. So if you made a bracha on the Pesach, then pater eshal zevach. It paters up any other karbanos. Any karban you got to eat, you had a special bracha. But it paters up all the other karbanos. For example, like the shlamim, you bring every other year. Then loy pater shel Pesach. It does not pater up the carbon Pesach. Rav Yishmael, Rav Akiva, Imer loizu b'terazu. Now let's take one moment here. What did Rav Yishmael teach us? Rav Yishmael taught us, you make a bracha on the carbon Pesach, and then afterwards you're eating a shlamim. Let's say, like we said, the shlamim yudalid, the shlamim that comes to fill you up. You don't have to make a separate bracha. Everyone here is wondering, 1 second, what do you eat last? The carbon Pesach. That shlamim you eat first. It's there to fill you up. So if you need the shlamim to fill you up, why are you making the bracha on the carbon Pesach first? Beautiful question. That is the question of the tzlach. And the Tzlach comes along, and he answers based on the Rambam, says the Tzlach, really they ate the carbon Pesach 2 times, which is a bit perhaps reminiscent to our eating matzah 2 times. Part of the reason we eat matzah 2 times is a machlekes rishonim. What the reason, if it's for the carbon Pesach or not, which is the reason why l'chatzchila we have 2 kizaysim by each. One is the Raisa though, one is the Rabbanan. Either way, Says the Tzlach, based on the Rambam, they would start their meal off with the Karban Pesach, then they would eat the shlamim to fill them up, and then they would conclude once they're full with that Karban Pesach, which is the din of Afikoimin, which is the din to keep the taste in their mouth. So now we understand that if you made a brach on the Karban Pesach, it patters up the Zavach. But if you made a brach of the opposite, it would not. That's a sheet of Rabbi Yishmael. And Rabbi Kiva says, nothing doing. Says the Gemara, according to Rabbi Yishmael, what do we see? We see something very interesting. We see, according to Rabbi Yishmael, that the bracha on the Karban Pesach could patter other things. So we see if we do the things of the Pesach, it works for other things. So says the Gemara, there's a difference in the application of the blood, a din that we've learned between the Karban Pesach and other Karbanis. The Karban Pesach, you do shvicha, you pour the blood, while the Karbanis, you do zrika, you sprinkle, you throw the blood. So therefore, says Rabbi Yishmael, says the Gemara, according to Rabbi Yishmael, zrika bichlal shvicha. And therefore, if you pour the blood of the other karbanis, for example, if you pour a shlamim, it's going to work. Just like the bracha on the Karban Pesach works for other karbanis, so too the type of application of the blood, the pouring of the dam, will work for other karbanis like the shlamim. However, the reverse is not true. But if you go, and then let's say on the Karban Pesach, which you're supposed to throw, you pour. Let's say the Karban Pesach, which you're supposed to pour, you throw it, then it's not good. It says the Gemara, shvicha loy shvicha bichlal zrika, and therefore the Karban Pesach, you cannot throw the blood. That is Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Kiva, loy shvicha bichlal zrika, zrika bichlal shvicha. Neither one works for the other. And we turn over to Kuf Chaval from Ebeis as we finish up the Masechta. Says the Gemara, Rav Simlai, ikloi lepidin aben. Rav Simlai went to opinion aben, a bit of a machlek is why this Gemara is appearing here. So the Rashbam points out right away, the reason is because just like the Mishnah discussed two types of brachas, one bracha on the Karban Shlamim, bracha on the Karban Pesach, so we bring another type of case of two brachas, and in a moment we'll speak out another beautiful thought of the Ben Yoyada. So it says Rav Simlai, Rav Simlai went to Pinyin Ben, they asked from him. Pshit, that's obvious. Ala Pinyin Ben, on the actual Pinyin Ben, when you're redeeming the first person, you give it to the Kohen, you're redeeming him with the 5 Salayim. Says the Gemara, who makes the bracha? Asher Kedishanu, Asher that's of course the father of the baby. It's his mitzvah. He makes a bracha on the actual redemption. However, asks the Gemara, who makes that bracha? Who makes that bracha? And for the moment, we're going to learn the Gemara Kipshutai, which is referring to that there's going to be one bracha. Who makes it? Either the Kohen or the father. Says the Gemara, what's the shayla? Kohen mivarich, why? The Kohen's getting anah, he's getting these 5 coins, so maybe he should make the bracha of Shechianu. Says the Gemara, ben mivarich, chav in mitzvah, because he's doing the mitzvah. And what happened? Rav Samlai, lo yav biyad, they didn't have an answer. Asal shal b'imidrash, they went to base medrash, they went to yeshiva, and they asked. Amrulei, they responded, Avia ben mivarich shtayim. The father of the kid makes 2 brachas, makes 1 bracha on the pidyon, makes a 2nd bracha, Shechianu. Says the Gemara, what I was just pointing out before is there's some that learned the Gemara that it means that Avia ben Mavarich Shtayim, the father of the child makes 2 brachas, and the Kohen will make 1. The question was just if also the father son will make it. But either way, the Pash is the Gemara is that the father of son makes the bracha 2 times, Shechianu and on the Pidyon Ben, and that is the halacha. Before we conclude, just to say the Ben Yoyada comes along, a beautiful thought, and he says, why do we conclude with this Gemara? Not like the Rashbam. He says, you know why we conclude with Pidyon Ben? Because we just finished Pesach. We just finished Pesachim. What happened? That Hashem was Pasach. Hashem skipped over the houses of the Mitzrayim, and Hashem redeemed us. Says the Ben Yoyada, similarly, we want to finish with a Pidyon, a redemption, like we are God's firstborn child, and He redeemed us. We also want to finish with the thought of Pidyon Ben, another type of redemption. And of course, we finish with a Tefillah. Then Amir Hashem, we should also very quickly be redeemed, and hopefully this entire Masechta will be Nageya this year, a few more days. With the coming of Mashiach Mir Hashem, b'meir v'yameinu hadron aloch arvei Pesachim, uslik Allah Masechta Pesachim. What a wonderful journey! I think everyone who is taking this journey with me, all the emails, all the chizik. It's really given me chizik. I hope it's given you chizik. I hope you appreciated all the learning. I appreciate everyone learning with me. What a tremendous chos to be able to learn together. And Amir Hashem, we should do a wonderful chazara on this Masechta Pesachim. Hadron, we should return to Masechta Pesachim. And of course, we should continue learning many, many more Masechtais. We're looking forward to continuing into Shkalim Amir Hashem as we learn Shkalim over Pesach. Mazel tov, mazel tov, mazel tov to everyone. I'm sure there'll be many SIYUM Erev Pesach this year. And Amir Hashem, we should all meet together here in Yerushalayim this year. And the Pesach, we should all be one b'chabura, not just a chabura of declaring Concise Daf Yomi, but a chabura of bringing the Karban Pesach together. Mazel tov. Maybe we'll need a few extra animals. Mazel tov.